Dan Forgey was an active member of the South Dakota Soil Health Coalition Board from 2015 to 2021. He is the farm manager for Cronin Family Farm and Ranch, on which he helps to run a cow-calf livestock operation, as well as 100% low disturbance no-till management of crop ground since 1993. Additional soil health practices utilized include diversified cropping rotations and cover crops. Forgey has also been a member of the Dakota Lakes Research Farm Board for the past 8 years. Dan's vision for the future of soil health is to see more interest in soil health so that one day it is as common in farmers' conservations as no-till. Everybody, please go ahead and welcome Dan.
Yep. Okay, you guys, thank you. What you just heard with Rick, that's really, really great. Our farm will probably never be there. It's not, it's just, I hope we are, but our limiting factor is moisture. The farm won the 2016 Leopold Award, and we're very proud of that. But one thing that is kind of what we're talking about on our farm is the power of diversity and long-term no-till. We're in a drier environment, and we'll go through all that. But one thing too is that we have to talk about is we talk about 4 generations. There's Janet, she's the 2nd generation. Monty and Mike, they're the 3rd generation. And then here's the 3 cousins, Casey, Corey, Treg, and Casey. So in this picture also, to show you where our farm will be going, is Corey on the side has got 3 kids now. Treg has got 1, and Sarah's expecting very soon in mid-February. So, and you can see that Casey's got 4 kids. When you come in the east door, you look, there'll be a profile, and there'll be Corey on his knees, and he'll be Casey's oldest will be with him, and they're in grass, and Corey's explaining what's going on. And I think that's the future of our farm, is everybody shares everything. You know, and I think, you know, a lot has been talked about this sustainability, and I think we have to ask ourselves, which way is the person going to go with this? How are you going to go forward with this? Are you going to be just a sustainable farmer, or are you going to be looking for a regenerative? So, and I think that's something we have to ask that question ourselves. I'm not saying you have to be that way, but are you striving to be that way? I think we need to put more back than what we're taking out. We live along the Lake Oahe, and we're in a drier environment. 18.5 inches average rainfall, and what it has is we have the Lake Oahe effect, where the rain will come, and when it gets to the river, it kind of skips a little bit. I mean, it's been going on as long as the reservoir has been there. You know, the land was, when it first came, and you know, it's kind of amazing because up in our pastures, it's not too far from the river, there's these old homesteads. So think about that. Think about what these guys went through when they were doing that tall grass prairie. They went along and said, I'm going to drive a stake here, I'm going to homestead this, but it just so happens, there's 3 of them up there within, and you think about, well, what were they thinking about water? How are they? And there's a lot of thoughts that went back into the homestead, and it kind of makes you question why they did it. You know, the night before the Barnes family had a hard rain, the rain soaked the roof, it collapsed, covering everything they owned. Just think about like that, something. Where do you turn? You know, the bad thing is he had lost his wife a year before, and he was raising his kids. And then so we think we have issues. When you start thinking, boy, I don't know, I don't have that good a yield, I don't do this, just think back to this. Just think, you know, what our forefathers or people went through. Lake Oahe, 370 acres. We use it a lot. We have water piped around a lot of our pastures. Water, it comes from pier, it comes up, and there'll be within a half a mile of the river, we'll have a hydrant you can turn on to water cows. So, but anyway, and then we irrigate with that, but there's a tremendous amount of water. So you look at these real water systems. Let's just think about this. Now, what I'm trying to get at is that should we be basically I'm going to call raising water or not putting water in the bank. So you look at all the water systems around, and it's a big deal how much water is going out of the reservoirs of the river. So everybody, I was reading the other day, it caught my attention about the drought in Kansas. And so I just went on, I kept reading. The Wichita Eagle, we could solve our water crisis together, all starve together. The Atlantic at Garden City, Kansas. After a century after the Dust Bowl, another environmental catastrophe is happening to the high plains of western Kansas. The signs of suitable but equivocal dry riverbeds, fields of sand, the sound of irrigation motors running, straining pumps from dwindling aquifers. The next disaster coming to the Great Plains. And then another one. This is Hays, Kansas. There's a lawsuit over water. 50 years ago, Carl Cronin, that'd be Trey's granddad, said, in your lifetime, we're going to be fighting over water. And it's happening right now. So what press do we get? This is the New York Times down here. This is in western Kansas. They're so used to irrigating. If they're used to irrigating, worrying about losing their well water, what they're talking about maybe even stopping them from irrigating some of Kansas, why aren't they promoting no-till? Look at the water savings they could get. It's sad. It's all about rain. And we know how, in our environment, in our low rainfall environment, we have to know how to manage water. We've only got so much. We got to make our ground hold more. You know, a little history on the farm. You know, I've been there for 53 years, and what I really wished I would have done better is not waited 26 years to get started in no-till and what we're doing right now, because we wasted a lot of years, but we really didn't know any better. You know, in 8,500 acres of grass, Trey said this morning, black Angus cattle, and what I really appreciate about the boys is what they're doing. When they run into a really wet year and have exceptional grass, then they might run some more of their yearling heifers or something. They put more stuff, the stocking rate goes up. But they manage the grass very well. And this is, and I think we need to look at this more. If you guys are in the grass situation, so just like right now, if you're 50%, if you use 50%, the top growth never slows down. If you use 70%, the roots stop growing for 17 days. 90% plant removed, 100% of the roots stop growing for 17 days. So just think about that. You think about why you should have a few more fences and move a few more cattle. This is a big deal, you guys. This is one reason why even last year towards the river, we were down to like a little over 12 inches of rain along our rivers where the major pastures were, and the guys never ran out of grass. They managed it. So this is on your left, that's wheat, and this is grass. So look at the root development. So you say, why can't we do this without putting grass back in a rotation? If we really want to do it, just like the picture over here, if you really want to do it, how can we do it without putting grass back in? This comes from the Noble Research. So the above ground yield is a 1.4 ton of organic material per acre, while the root yield was 4 tons per acre below ground. So that's why grass is so successful, because the root mass, everything it does. You know, the Howard Buffett, had a book, and it was about 40 chances. And what he said, everybody, you're going to have 40 chances in life to get all your mistakes out of the way and try to do things right. And I really, you think about that, and everyone just think, well, let's see, I've had 10 years, 5 years, whatever, and then you got a few droughts. So I've had 53 years and 26 years I really messed up. So this is the story of the journey going forward. You know, Cindy, my wife, I just said that earlier. I didn't expect that award. But anyway, I said to her, I mean, she travels with me all the time, and people say, well, you know, don't you get tired of sitting here and doing this? And she says, well, at least we're together. And I appreciate that. But another thing is we were sitting in St. Louis at the National No-Till, and we were sitting at the table for breakfast. There's a couple from Indiana, and there's a couple from Wisconsin, and a young lady, she was a NRCS, a new hire from Michigan. And she sits down, and right away, I overheard Cindy. They were talking. This girl started asking questions about the soil and about whatever, and all of a sudden, Cindy was answering. So, I mean, I really appreciate her, because a lot of times she'll straighten me out and as we go along. And then this is what happens to you. You know, people laugh at that, and I appreciate if you do laugh at it. But there comes a time in life when you're not quite like you used to be. You know, these were our yields before we started no-till, and this was serious, you guys. I know the varieties and everything, but we were getting just as much rain. You look back, and a lot of years we were 25 inches. So anyway, 65 bushel corn, and we were afraid to plant the corn too far away from the house because we knew we were going to have to cut it for silage. We didn't understand what was going on. We had a lot to learn. We're in a rotation. We worried about the soil blowing at the end, and you know. So what do? I mean, we thought we were one of the better farmers because everybody else was doing it, and it was only our fallow only blew once or twice a year, and everybody else blew 3 or 4 times during the winter. So we thought we were pretty good. In 50 plus years, this is one thing I learned how to do, and that's take organic matter down, because that's what we were doing. And this is one thing that I think a guy should really kind of remember. Change happens when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change. So think about that, you guys. So there's going to come a time, I don't know if you're just getting ready to no-till or maybe plant cover crop, whatever. I think this is a very good point. You know, when we started no-till, and I'm going to back up just a little bit, is Dwayne Beck had a tremendous influence on our area. Tremendous influence on our area, central South Dakota. So September 1, 2020 to September 1, 2021, I like to account for that fall moisture in the crop when you do your planting, because that's what makes it. If we run into the fall with a little bit of moisture, we're all right. Before that, we had our profile was completely full, or completely empty, excuse me. So here's 21 to 22 this growing season. So right here's what's kind of carried us through. But you look at that, we still had 18.7 inches of rain. We were living off borrowed time because we didn't have water in our profile. I think you really have to have water in your profile. So you go through this, and so all I'm going to do is we're going to talk about some yields that happened, and it's all about what the soil did for us. We farm 10,500 acres. We irrigate, but then I really believe that you learn to work with heavy residue. Heavy residue is our saving grace on our farm. So when you look at 140 bushel corn, takes 9 inches of water to grow the vegetative, and then 10 bushel for every inch after that, so 140. So how are you going to do any better than that with 18 inches of rain without a lot of water in your profile? Looking back on 2022, and we're going to kind of touch on some of these. You know, I'm going to say this more than once, you guys. Soil health, difficult to build, hard to maintain, easy to destroy. So it's not one of these deals you can get up to the top of the mountain and lay down a breath and say, I'm there. You can't do that. You have to keep working to maintain this. So our sunflowers, we're going to go through some of these crops. So our sunflowers, our best field was 3,600, 16% above our farm average, and then the in use was 3.5. We're cutting back on in. In use is 5. So we're cutting back on in on everything, but these are just examples what the soil gave us. 68 bushel beans, spring wheat, best field 82 bushel. You know, and like on the spring wheat, you know, is a little bit easier, and I think some way we should start doing that with corn, because you can always see where you're at because of your proteins. So use your protein. So 14 is the normal protein on spring wheat. So we used the residuals. Used all the residual, and then what it was is 1.6 pounds a bushel is what it turned out. We did. We used 2.1 to put on. Dr. Ray Ward right now he'll use 2 pounds a bushel on wheat. I think we have to quit using fertilizer as much as we are. Our winter wheat, best field 109, and then 1.7, and then 13.1. 12's where you want to be on winter wheat. So this is we use shell-borne stripper headers. And the main reason we do is we want the straw standing up, and then when it does lay down, it's not flat on the ground. It kind of slows the microbes. We don't lose our residue very fast. But one thing, and this is Trig's idea, and it's a good one, going at a 7% angle. So we're going to get into that, why he does that. This looks, so a 7% angle, so you're going just a little bit, here's the track. So we'll get into that later, why we do that, but it was Trig's idea, good idea. Best dryland corn, 220 bushel. This is where I think we need to find out what the protein is on the corn. If you can track your protein on your corn, you can kind of see if you're not, just as a rule of thumb. You know, this is a big one, and this is part of it how we did it, because like I'm talking, we want ground cover. We want residual. So just like right now at 87 degrees, without cover, without residue, and 107 out in the open. But look at here where you've got 87 degrees, at 70 degrees up to 95, 100% of the moisture is used for growth. When you get warmer than 107, you're really flirting with not only your bacteria dying, but 15% of the moisture is used for growth, 85% of the moisture is lost through evaporation, transpiration. That's huge. That's huge. That's when you plant corn, you said, I hope it rains. This is just another one, 73.6. It was 101 degrees that day. That was this summer. So 75 degrees, corn needs 1 inch of water a week. At 85 degrees, 2 inches of water a week. And at 93 degrees, 4 inches of water a week. And that's soil temperature. And that's from the USDA. Research in Kansas, 75% of the soil covered help evaporation during the growing season of a corn crop by 3 inches of rainfall on annually 4 inches a year. So what I'm saying is we're managing our water. We're trying to manage our water. We just have to get it into soil so we don't lose it. The power of diversity. This is a cover crop grazed. We try to leave 25% to 30% of our cover crop when we graze. That's nothing but paid us off by doing that. We do not overgraze. There is exception. We try not to overgraze. You know, this deal here I talked about, like our corn, we leave it standing. We don't use rollers and stripper head stubble, and this is a pretty diversified, and this is kind of a rare case, but you can see we still got a lot of residue there. Well, there's a lot of root mass under there, so they've got something to eat. But another thing, a lot of this is above the ground, so it doesn't come into contact with the ground, but it will eventually. So what damages a raindrop? They're usually 20 miles an hour, and they dislodge soil particles, and they bounce 3 to 5 foot. And when you get all done, what they're doing is most of the particles will fill the holes in the macropores to stop the water infiltration. These are our crops we raised on our farm, but one thing that really, what we really strive for is to stay at least 70% above of high residue crops. We feel that it's just the driving force in the low rainfall environment. So this is our county. Our grass, see, look, the orange is 2021, this is 2006. So we're losing grass, we're gaining corn, we're gaining soybeans, losing spring wheat, and this is the one that really hurts everybody, is because a lot of guys will be in a 3-year rotation with spring wheat and you just don't get the residue. You just don't get the residue. You have to be thinking ahead. Trey did a very good job of talking about that at his talk today. But, and then one thing that we should be proud of is the fallow. We were 25,000 acres and now we're 2,400 acres, and that's one producer. So the no-till battle's winning up there. So this is Minnehaha County, and I just wanted to, one thing it kind of struck me on this is, look at the grass. Is that going into CRP? They never did plant much wheat, but look at the grass. And then the beans are less than they were, and the corn, of course, is higher. You know, this is our center pivots at the river, and so what we did was we were corn beans like everybody east of us. We thought this was just a great deal. That's the only way to go, the most money, whatever. And then what happened is white mold came in. And I think this is really important to focus on being proactive about preventing problems from happening rather than constantly reacting to the latest problems that occur. You know, you'll go someplace and they'll say, boy, you know, this chemical didn't kill the cheatgrass or downy brome, so what do? We go to this chemical. I hope they come out with a new one. Change your rotation. Change your rotation. Just like everything, if you can fix it by putting another crop in there, do something without going to the jug if you can. So here's where we are right now. We try to grow covers behind spring wheat. It's a time deal, but these are our calves. We're weaned on covers. The boys do a really good job of this. These are the calves. They put the cows and calves both in on covers, and then they took the cows away. Calves, and right now, even them young, and they save all their own replacement heifers, and them calves remember how to graze. You put them calves out on covers, and they go after it right away. I mean, the cows teach the calves, and cattle like to graze. If they had their choice, they'd be grazers. And this is working for us. So this is corn planted the way so this is what Trey's planting into. I keep saying, you know, he'll be having trouble, you know, and whatever, and I say, boy, yeah, and then, you know, I feel sorry for him, but we're so focused on this is what we have to do with the residue that's our where we go with it. But this is the corn we planted in here, and this is probably one of the worst fields you'd ever see planted into, and Trey was handling it. And basically, if he wouldn't have done that deal where we wouldn't have gone offset 7 degrees, then every time you come to a track the combine makes, it lets all that straw kind of flutter out, and then you can keep on going. But this is a commitment. This is a commitment. We pull our cart. This is a commitment, and it's a very good commitment. We use the urea is 3 inches off the row, and that's our coulter. Everybody talks about you need waffle coulters. That's our coulter. The starter goes in the seed. We use all dry fertilizer. And then the pneumatic trash whips, and then closing wheels, and then the mud smiths. And then we use the seed firmer. And then so what maybe you guys are using Keaton's, but what that Keaton does is it pushes that down firm. So if we're not closed 100%, it's not really that critical because our seed's pushed firmly into the soil. And then we went to we went to the Pro Stitch just because we liked the way they worked a little better. So if anybody's got any questions on this, Traig's right here, but this is his new corn planter. I shouldn't have put we went to a 24-row corn planter. Traig went to a 24-row corn planter because every bit of things that happened on here was Traig's design. There's not an opener to blow dry, so he made one. This is a liquid, and you can talk to him if you want. He learned how to marry it up where he doesn't have to get out or anything when he hooks. So he's got towers for his dry, he's got towers for his, and then it all runs, these tubes all run from the back. And it works very well when the conditions are right. And he can probably get 40, 45 acres, 50, 60 acres on a fill. But it's to us, I like that idea. I mean, he's did a very good job of doing this, but don't be afraid to ask him questions about it. So what we do is we put our map and zinc with the seed, and our nitrogen and sulfur go off to the side, and we do that at planting. So so what it was either get another drill, get another man involved, need more support, or go to a 60-footer. And Traig elected to go to a 60-footer, and I don't think we'll ever be, he'll never regret that because we run a lot of acres and it's just a lot less taken care of and one guy's handling it all. But, one thing I want to comment, when you taking pictures like that, you really want to be careful and know where that back tire is coming. Because I've been dinking around taking pictures and that back tire will go right by you. But that's kind of the, turn the radio up a little bit more so I can see, and then that won't happen. And then in 2003, we purchased this drill, and we've been there ever since, and we were looking for a place to put our fertilizer on with one pass. We like one pass, we like efficiency. So what we do is urea goes every 20 inches, and then seed and starters every 10. So the urea will split the starter and seed. And then so how it is then every 20 inches there's urea, and then this is our starter. So what it does, especially on spring wheat, we really got to have population. We feel we really have to work on population. So by doing this, what happens, and you can time and time again, the fourth week, fourth leaf, the urea, the nitrogen and the plant get together, and then we'll run some potash for chloride, and then some AMS in furrow with the MAP. This is kind of one of them deals you say, especially on a dry year, and we'll come back, and if we have to, we'll do that. Put some sulfur down with the UAN, but I mean, hopefully we don't have to, but it's in the plan. Jay Fuhrer was on farm, and him and Traig spent about a half a day together, and then he made that comment to Traig: if you have more carbon entering the soil than leaving, your kids will probably farm the land. If you have more carbon leaving than entering, they probably will not. So you guys, whatever we're doing today, what everybody wants to do, it's either for your kids or your grandkids. If you make the next step and whatever you do, it's for your grandkids. And this is one of our rotations. And when I'm talking carbon, I'm talking carbon and residue, but I'm also talking carbon, bringing carbon in. And the one thing that by saying this is while we do this too, and I know we shouldn't be using pesticides, but we do. But a lot of people have resistant weeds, and a lot of people have trouble with weeds, and we do not. And the only reason is not only our heavy residue, but the rotation of our chemicals. Very important, you guys. So I think everybody needs to, if you don't, I think everybody needs to be using the Web Soil Survey to find out your water holding capacity. And just like this particular field is variable rated, but you need to know how much you've got. And then another thing, and I'll show you in a little bit, I use a ball probe. It goes on the floor with me when I'm looking at crops, and I really pay attention to how much water we have. And then so the benefit of organic matter is to 20 to 30 pounds of N, and we do not take credit for our organic matter on our soil test. Because a lot of what happened this last year, when it kicks in, then we'll get more yield, it'll pay us back. But we do not credit organic matter. That holds up to 90% of its weight in water. That's the big one. To us, that's the big, it's all important. You know, one thing I haven't heard much about is how important it is to bring carbon into the system. Jerry Hatfield in St. Louis, he said, I think what a guy needs to do on this selling carbon, I think you should focus everything you have on how much carbon you can bring into your soil. You focus on selling carbon, and you'll go buy running boards for your pickup. If you invest in time and learning and the practices to put carbon in the field, in your soil, to make organic matter, you'll buy a pickup instead of a pickup with running boards on it. And that's his take, you guys. I'm not saying we shouldn't sell it if it's there, but just think about that. I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't focus on it, but a lot of it, we should be thinking about what the carbon's doing making organic matter. Soil aggregates, this is an organic matter, and so we talked some about aggregates, and aggregates are tremendously important to us. This is from Mark Lebick and Hellweiser from North Dakota, but so you just about double between where we were 2 and then we're up around 4. So you get a lot more water holding capacity with increasing organic matter. So the amount of water you can hold with every percent of organic matter. You know, and this is, you know, everybody doesn't, this is something that, you know, so you talk about when it rains, you know, the water goes down the worm holes, burrows, and whatever, but we don't take into consideration that everything that grows in that soil's got roots. And every root that goes, it still leaves a little path for water. And so you can see where the tillage is very destructive and where the no-till. It may be in doubt that there's any other animal which has played a more important part in the history of the world as the lowly organized creatures, and that's Charles Darwin in 1882. And, you know, and I really believe that. We don't give the earthworms enough credit, and I know a lot of people like Brian and a lot of people have been no-tilling. You know, you go out there, and I mean, in the spring, they're just unreal, the amount of earthworms. So this was a lentil field in 2017, and you can see the earthworms burrows. This was volunteered. We took the crop off, we had a rain, and then they came right back, and so we left it as a cover crop. So they infiltrate water, and then during the drought, these tunnels also for deep-rooted plants to penetrate. But I think this is kind of a big deal, and you stop and think about it in the burrows or, you know, the middens, so you can see where there'd be more nutrients. So you can see, you know, all them burrows, you can see why plants want to go there, and you can see where some of your yield comes from. You know, working on covers, and we started in 2006, and you guys, if you're not, like we were in the meeting the other day and talking about SARE and grants. If you not got a grant, think about a grant, because we did this with the grant. It was to help with Shannon Osborne, ARS, NRCS, Jason Miller, and then the SDSU with Dwayne Beck and Ruth Beck. And so what we wanted to really find out is I'd tried covers before, but I wanted to learn something. And we learned quite a bit. Right now, what we learned doesn't mean anything because we didn't realize we needed to be diversified with our covers. We went to a full season cover. This is on teff grass. And what I'm saying is about a full season cover. We're going to plant them the 7th of July. We're going to plant them the 7th of July, let them grow through the season, and then we're going to, 1st of December, we're going to graze it. And in paddocks, the one thing that is this, I don't know. We would take that and take down to the corn or something like that, but we wouldn't. But everything there, other than that, I like. Another one is we'd probably put collards in here instead of rape. We have a hard time with the rape volunteering if it goes to seed. I like the kale. But, what I was doing is I went through that cover crop profitability book, come up with each one of these and figured it out, and I should have had a 32-to-1. And so I wanted to stay above 24-to-1, but I wanted a 32-to-1, kind of slow breaking down. I didn't want it to go away too fast. One thing, this is something we like to do, and the only reason that we do it this way is because we'll buy like maybe 1,000 pounds of something, and then not every field's going to get the same thing. So we want to mix it ourselves. We don't feel that we're afraid of them guys mixing it. The only cover crop we'll use of our own is the oats. We used to try to raise stuff, and we used to try to buy from the neighbors, and now with all the weeds, the water hemp and stuff, you just can't. It's small seed. You just can't take the chance of doing it. This is a cover crop field. This is what we're into. Put this picture up because it's really important to us, and all the directors will know right away. This is Jim Miller. He helped us a lot. He come down that day. We had a field day, and Jim came down and worked on the pit and explained a lot of things what was going on. This is Al Myron. He was on one of the first batch. He's the one that sat in that room with the 35 guys, and he was one of the guys that raised your hand and said, "I want to help with this." So him and Anthony, back in them days, you guys, you don't realize it, but the Soil Health Coalition their meetings were in Pierre. They were once a month, no matter what. So usually him and Anthony drove from Pierre, they drove up to, or from Sioux Falls, drove to Gettysburg. Very deep thinker, tremendously missed that man. But he was really one of the main starters of the Soil Health Coalition. We were here 4 years ago, we were here, and Christine Jones was here, and I made some comment about maybe putting some nitrogen with their cover crop. And she said, "No, you don't do that. You just don't do that. You just gotta let it do its own thing." So we went through there and we put 2 strips of no nitrogen in, put 30 pounds of N on. I had about 20 pounds of carryover, so it's 50 pounds of N that we put on that cover crop field. So we had a 3-way mix, and what that was all grasses, big Sudan grasses. They really, big, rank, and so you can see the yield, it's still pretty good, but you get down and get down and get down. But anyway, the carbon to nitrogen ratio was 38-9, but this is the one. This is the same mix without N. This is with N. So look what we did. We didn't quite double it, but close. Look how much more carbon we brought in. I'm not saying that we need to fertilize. I think that we need to use fertilizer as a weapon is what we need to do right now. There's some times it needs a little help. Financially, this is the way you need to do it. And like on our farm, we still have to pay the bills, and I think that's a good day. And then here's the biomass. We biomassed at 2 different times, and I think anybody raising cover crops, especially to graze, I think you need to use a biomass. Cut a biomass off a square yard or a hoop, whatever you're going to do, and send it to Ward Lab or whatever, complete analysis. Put it in a garbage bag just the way it is. You don't have to dry it down and get it sent off. But when you do this, so this was the August 14th, there's 7,100 pounds. November 28th, there's 82. But look what happened here with no N. The protein, it paid for it. The feed value paid for it. So I think that deals like this is just like you need to try things on a small scale. If you got a field, do a few passes, do something, but do it on a small scale. Find out for yourself. So we came back that next year and going to corn. So we soil sampled it. So right here, the side band in, so this 9 pounds is from the starter. And this side band, this was put over the top. And then this was side band, over the top, side band, over the top, side band. But what's really interesting, so we took credit that 30 pounds of residual in is in this number. But we're finding that time and time again in every test we run, you fertilize too heavy, you lose yield. And I think it's just like Chris was saying, and everybody, I think you make the microbes lazy. I think you make all them things. I think you need to supplement it, like in the guys that raise the big time corn, they fertilize 4 times. And I think what we're doing is we're making the soil lazy, and so we just have to, I think there's a number we can get, and I don't think we're quite that high, like we're 0.89. So then we came back, so we grazed. Toby Stroth from Dickinson, he says when you graze, the cows use 20% and put 80% back in manure and urine. So so this is what we did, and like I'm saying, so we had 2,800 pounds not grazed and 5,400 pound grazed. And we really stuck with that, and it's really helped. So this is the next year. So this is the same field, corn on corn. This is all put on sideband. So it's the same thing. This just isn't so right now 1 pound. But one thing I thought, in the top 2 feet, we had 63 pounds of in. So it took that long for the cover crops and everything to kick in. But so you can see though, we did lose yield by going up on nitrogen. You know, this is just a few things we've done, and this is a couple of years ago we had quite a bit of PP, not quite a bit, but it was quite a bit for us. So this was corn and this was prevent plant. So you went and planted cover crop and the cattle grazed, used an electric fence in November, December, and that's, Trey said this morning that the boys are getting very good at moving them off to different places and moving away from home and figuring out water, and I think that's really going to be a win-win for everybody. This is heifers growing on a full season, the 15th of November. So we sample every field every year, and the main reason is, you guys, is mill variable rate, and what we're finding out, and there's a lot of guys that will testify to this, is in some of our zones, we're really finding the low pH, because before when you composite sample, it wasn't really picking up. Now we can, if we don't have to address anything, but at least we know we could be running into an issue. So we're going to try to fix that right now by, we don't put as much fertilizer on as but we maybe adjust our yield goals and focus on what zones that you're worried about. And then we'll variable rate our seed nitrogen and phosphorus, and our corn will variable rate population. But one thing too with our wheat, we'll variable rate our nitrogen and our starter. But one thing, you guys, setting your yield goal, you'll see that 2021 is missing because that was the drought year. So that's how we set our yield goals. I mean, so we want to have it, we want numbers. We don't want to just say, well, we're always 190 or whatever. We want to set numbers. I think this is something that should be done on our farm, is variable rate and cover crops, different species on different soils. Mycorrhizae fungi, and I'll let this go, but just a natural state. And then cost-effective nitrogen management is the key to profit and productive farming. And I really believe that, you guys. I think we've hurt ourselves by putting too much nitrogen on in the past. And this is, I really talking with Chris the other night at dinner, and she said she worked with Sarah Wright. And I just thought that was so neat that she worked with Sarah Wright, because finding that glinoline wasn't very long ago, glomalin. And then this is another thing, the difficult mycorrhizae fungi, and she'll go through this. So we're just about done here. So we prevent plant 2020, and you can read what we did. Sampled covers in the fall, 15 pounds. Dry year, corn yielded 2021, 177. But after the second year, after the first corn crop, after the corn crop, we had 70 pounds of residual in. So it's really giving it back to us. What I like a lot is the flax. I mean, flax I think should be in every mix. This is that field. We couldn't get a ball probe in it, and then it got an inch and a half of rain, and it went in. And this is where we're facing right now on covers planted. And Treg and I talked a lot about this, and we've got to make up our mind what we're going to do, because what's going on is this is covers is 6 weeks old, and we only had 10 inches of moisture. And you cannot, it's got to take moisture. We were in a dry cycle. When I soil sampled this fall, we had, most of our fields had down 0 to 24, had no moisture at all. So this is something you've got to make up your mind yourself. Everybody's the same. If you do something started on a small scale, and it's all about management. Will we go to covers when we get in the red cycle again? Yes, we can. Are we going to get all this done in 1 year? A lot of guys say, let's go plant covers, and we'll be there right away. This has been a long journey for us. So letting the winter wheat, the flush of winter wheat be a cheap cover, and then this is where organic matter's gone. We're still going up. And then these are our yield goals for right now, and so our yield goals have gone up. But this is one that's really hits home to us. This was Central South Dakota in 2007. Central South Dakota in 2014. The guy had a soybean field and went and planted winter wheat on it, and then it blew. And this was 2020. This is corn that a guy had soybeans 5 years in a row, and the dust blew out on it and blew over that. So we've really got to stop that from happening. So even in a good no-till environment, it'll happen. That's what that deal about hard to take care of, that easy to destroy. This is a field that has been, not ours, been no-tilled for 16 years, and he just thought he had to work some of the trash in. Essentially, all life depends on the soil. There cannot be no life without the soil, no soil without life. They have evolved together. You guys, thank you. But one thing, I'm sorry I rushed at the end, but one thing I really wanted to leave you guys with is, I've said it once before, and we're farming for the generations going forward. We're not farming for us to buy that new pickup next year. When you take care of the soil, you're doing it for the future generations. So, okay, thank you guys. Cindy's giving me dirty looks, so I better quit.
We'd like to go ahead and thank Dan again for everything, not only that he came up and presented today, but also all that he's done for the coalition. On behalf of the coalition, we have a present or a gift for him as well.